Hi, I'm Alex Coletti. I'm the moderator for this panel. Before I get into the moderation, I'm going to introduce Rebecca Orison. She's the data manager for the Pipeline Safety Trust. She's been at the Safety Trust for about 6 months now and comes to the Safety Trust with a doctorate in climate science. So please give her a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this panel on lessons from recent incidents. We're going to have a couple questions that we try to keep in mind as we walk through some of these recent incidents. And first is, how are some of the lessons we've learned from recent incidents contextualized by the historic improvements that have been made over time in pipeline incident response? And secondly, how or what exactly are these ongoing issues that may still be yet to be addressed, both by either recommended regulatory action or from actions outside the scope of regulatory activity. So I'm a data person. I often look at charts like this and think about pipeline incidents, significant pipeline incidents through the decades from a big picture perspective. And we can draw conclusions from charts like these, thinking about maybe how hazardous liquids may have had a spike and come down in recent times, but still have kind of an overall trend increasing based on that time period we look at. You could think about gas distribution and transmission having, maybe it appears to be a slight decreasing trend, but when we really analyze what's going on, we can see that these really aren't statistically significant changes, and there is some limitation in still bringing down that incident level. So while there are lessons that we can draw from these kinds of data analysis perspectives, it's also important to look at incidents themselves and understand there's a lot of complexity in each incident, and that there could be multiple factors that kind of come into play. So what are lessons we can learn from looking very closely at specific incidents? So over the last half decade or so, there's been a number of really significant incidents that I hope we can kind of keep in mind as context for this panel. In Upper Makefield, Pennsylvania, there was a jet fuel spill, and some of the folks' water coming out of their tap looks like this. We can see there's been some identified areas by the operators and some larger regions that have actually been tested for some pollutants. So there's a lot of concern and ongoing litigation in that community. In Deer Park, a lot of you may remember, close to home here where we are in New Orleans, there was an incident in Deer Park, Texas, a liquefied petroleum gas pipeline, an explosion there, which there was quite a delay in having a response there and a large release. In Coolidge, Arizona, a few years ago, gas transmission pipeline exploded, and a family was dramatically shifted as the father and the daughter were killed and the mother seriously injured. In Danville, Kentucky, this natural gas pipeline exploded with one fatality, and there was some issues here related to the manufacturing of that pipeline that came to light afterwards. So some lessons we can think about kind of in terms of the manufacturing as well. In Jackson, Mississippi, in January of last year, there was a home explosion. So many of you may have heard about home explosions in the news and challenges there, and what are the lessons that we really should be taking away from these kinds of incidents. In Huntersville, North Carolina, in 2020, more than 2 million gallons of gasoline were spilled into a nature reserve. So we have all kinds of impacts and all kinds of things we have to kind of keep in mind. So these are just a few incidents to highlight. There are many more incidents that have happened over the years, over the last 5 years. We have Satartia, which came up in our pipeline safety conversation yesterday. Collin County in Texas, Freeport, Texas. I know we have some folks from Freeport here at the conference who have the incident there on their mind. In Evansville, Indiana, West Reading, Pennsylvania, South Jordan, Utah, Beaver County, Oklahoma, Lexington, Missouri, as well as various spills from Keystone South Bow system. So from each of these failures, we really can see a lot of tragedy within those incidents, but there are a lot of lessons also that it's really imperative that we take and so that we don't have those same repeated lessons that have to be learned over and over again. So hopefully we can take some of those lessons and use them to transform the actions we take, all of us together, in order to curve those incident trends down to zero. So with that, I'll bring Alex Coletti back to the stage to moderate a panel with some great guests that we have here today. Thank you very much.
Well, hi, everybody. Sorry about my voice. I apologize in advance. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. My name is Alex Scaletti. I am previously of PHMSA in the rulemaking division, as well as a previous investigator in charge at the NTSB. Happy to be moderating this panel today. We've got some really great folks, and I'm really interested to see what they have to say for some of our questions. So without further ado, this is Dr. Jacob Heilman. He's an assistant professor, the Department of Geology and Geography at West Virginia University. Next to him, we have Mr. Matt Smith, program manager of the Pipeline Safety and Damage Prevention Group in the Safety and Reliability Division at the Illinois Commerce Commission. Next to him, Mr. Austin Hastings, PE, is the vice president of gas engineering at Pacific Gas and Electric Company. And then last is Mr. John Moan, previously was senior press secretary and communication director for Harris County Judge Linda Hidalgo.
Lina Hidalgo.
Oh, thank you. This is, again, many thanks. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into the questions. And we've got a few, and we want to make sure we get to your questions at the end. So we're going to kind of keep things moving today. So the first one, and I'm going to start with John, and have everybody answer this down the line, but how do you think historical accidents and incidents have shaped the way the pipeline industry approaches pipeline integrity and pipeline safety?
I'm coming from a public official's perspective. I'm talking about an incident that happened on September 16th of 2024, and that's when a man lost control of his car. The official line is that he died by suicide. I don't know. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. His family might have something to say about that. My point being is that he crashed the car into a pipeline, a transmission line, sending flames shooting hundreds of feet into the air. It was a shocking, visceral experience for the community and for those of us who were involved in the communications response and in trying to put this fire out. And what I would say, what was learned, at least from my perspective, is that in Texas, really, everything is subject to regulatory capture, and that industry tells the regulators what to do. That's what I learned. And the issue is, for me, and we'll talk about this more, is transparency and keeping an open line of communication. And I had a unique perspective because the operator of that line was Energy Transfer Partners. And in a previous career, I was a journalist, and I worked the Dakota Access Pipeline story in which ETP was the builder of that. So I kind of knew who to look for right away, and I made sure to get the public affairs person when I saw that person, as well as the communications director of ETP, in touch right away and made sure I did my best Rose Nader impersonation and looked them in the eye and said, "You're going to get things done for us, right?" And I stood there and made sure that they were introduced to our external relations team.
Yeah.
So in terms of what was learned, I don't know if they learned anything from it other than they went right to the lawyers, okay? That's just that's my personal perspective. I'm only speaking for myself.
That's helpful. Thank you. Austin.
Yeah, so being from Pacific Gas and Electric, those of you that have heard of the San Bruno incident, that's where I'm going to go to. It's been just over 15 years since San Bruno happened, and it was a tremendous tragedy. Some of you were probably on the webinar from that the PST hosted early last month. And from a PG&E perspective, it was a complete overhaul of our gas system. It was a complete overhaul of our leadership, of our practices, of our approach to maintaining safe and reliable service relative to our pipeline system. And then everything that we invested into our own system, we then broadened and made sure that we educated the entire industry via INGA, via AGA, and other methods to make sure that the best practices that we were discovering or inventing or bringing to the table, we could share to the whole industry so the whole industry could be safer as a result of that incident.
Thanks. Matt?
I think for the historical incidents, most of the time, the operators have looked at that, they've taken action, but it's the very serious ones. It's not the ones that we see on a regular basis. And in Illinois, we're probably called about 20 incidents a year. And of those, most of those are inside piping. They're not anything to do with the jurisdictional piping. But it's those that really impact us more as far as we still have to take action on those. And what are the operators doing to correct the problem? What actions do we need to take to correct that problem? And that's where we're a little bit different than PHMSA in the state, that we can go ahead and adopt regulations. We don't have to go through as many hoops as what they do. So we do look at not just the big incidents, but all incidents to try to figure out what actions do we need to take as a regulatory body.
And then lastly, Jacob.
All right, so I don't have a background in industry, or I'm not coming from the regulatory side, so part of my interest in coming here was to actually learn more about this question from you all. But what I can offer is, one of my concerns is that given my focus on the Appalachian region, one of the largest natural gas basins in the United States, I would argue that we should be paying more attention to that region specifically, because my concern is that there are trends in historical incidents that may have gone missed. And what can we learn that would be specific and applicable to improving pipeline safety in the Appalachian region, given the proliferation of all of these large natural gas transmission pipelines?
And that's a good segue into what I would like to talk about next, which is kind of what emerging trends are we seeing in pipeline incidents and accidents today. Jacob, if you wouldn't mind expanding a little bit further on your work there, appreciate it.
Sure. So in 1 minute, I'll just comment on one thing that I have done very recently and I'm still working on. So I've worked on a geographical analysis of over 1,300 incidents on natural gas transmission pipelines from the PHMSA data set. And I set out to compare the frequency of different types and subtypes of incidents across regions in the US, specifically looking at PHMSA administrative regions, as well as in isolating the counties that are commonly considered to form the Appalachian region. And sure enough, things look very different when you do that. And those trends that I was alluding to, I think have gone overlooked in Appalachia because there is a statistically significant difference across all of those 1,300 plus incidents if you zero in on the Appalachian region that you don't notice if you're just looking at the individual PHMSA regions, and that is the prevalence of natural force incidents, not exclusively, but primarily landslides. I think that brings us to a couple of questions on the role of PHMSA, which we can get into later, maybe in the Q&A. But does PHMSA have the ability to, given its structure, address safety issues that are specific to specific regions? Is there a process for that? And now we're actually talking about incidents that are primarily related to the siting of a pipeline. So now we're also in FERC territory because these are interstate natural gas transmission pipelines. So these are risks that simply get passed on down to PHMSA kind of after the fact. So is there a role for PHMSA to maybe play in the future more on that front end?
And you answered my second part of that question as well, which is what kind of actions and what players would be involved in those kind of actions to address those emerging trends. So, Matt, I'm going to ask you the same question. What kind of emerging trends are you seeing in the state of Illinois?
So it is interesting that looking at incident trends versus annual reports, and I used to lead a team that was distribution. We worked on just distribution topics, and it was a federal state group. There were about 25 of us on the team, and we would look at annual report data, and we focused more on the annual report data. When you started looking at the trending on that, you see that corrosion is dropping off, which makes more sense because plastic pipelines are increasing and they're retiring the steel pipe. So that all makes sense, but then when you start looking at one of the areas that is trending upward, and that's equipment failure. So why is equipment failure trending upward? And I honestly do not know the answer yet. We're still trying to figure it out. But is it because the equipment's old? Is it because they're not maintaining the equipment? What are those issues? So from that perspective, I was more focused on equipment failure. But to prepare for this, I went ahead and pulled up the last 5 years, roughly 5 years of data from PHMSA's website on distribution. And I went through there. Corrosion had 13 incidents, explosions or incidents, I guess. There were 15 for equipment failure. Those were the two lowest. So the one thing that I was looking at to try to focus on, what should we be looking for equipment failure, is a big problem with the annual report as far as leaks, but as far as incidents, it's not. So it's trying to figure out the right data. Now, interestingly enough, I started counting excavation damages and I lost track of how many I was at. So I even put in there too many to count. So that definitely is a big problem that we're encountering, and what can we do to fix that? We are trying to take some steps to bring down the excavation damages. They are increasing in Illinois and kind of across the nation. So haven't come out with the answer on that one yet, but that's the trend that we're trying to look to fix.
That's great. Thank you. And in terms of what kind of like next actions that you guys are planning on taking, let's say related to the equipment failure, what are your plans moving forward? Do you know?
So with the equipment failure, we're going to have to start diving into the annual reports for our operators and looking to see what exactly those problems are, what occurred, to see if there is anything as far as replacements not taking place. We have had issues with regulator station failures, and we see that when we go out and test those that they fail. So is there any type of preventive work that's taking place? That's definitely a big question that we have.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. And this question, I'm going to start with Austin and then move to John. But after a pipeline accident or incident, how do you see stakeholders improving transparency to the public and regulators? So in your case, how can you see the pipeline company increasing transparency to the public and the regulators?
Yeah, Bill asked me this question during the webinar last month. He asked the question, if you could change one thing, what would it be? And my answer was radical transparency. And what I mean by that is when an incident happens, say in the industry, just yesterday, there was an incident that happened in Nebraska where there was an underground storage facility where a well blew out. And there was a fire, and unfortunately one person is missing and one person was injured. And so the first thing that my mind and my direct reports and my whole team's minds go to is, what can we learn from it? What happened? Did they experience a failure that we aren't aware of? Or is the failure that they experienced, is it in our risk register? Do we need to increase that kind of stratification or leveling of that risk that's in our own risk register and reassess our own risks? And do we need to take any mitigations or actions relative to that? Unfortunately, what happens is an incident happens and you can't share everything that occurred within that incident with your colleagues and your peers, and they can't do the same with you. And I think that's a missed opportunity where there's going to be this lag time of months or even years between incident and official final report, and only then can you really look at your own operations and figure out how you can get better. Because all these incidents are tragic, and we need to mourn them when they do happen, but then we need to shift into learning mode. What can we learn as an industry? What can we learn as a company to then make our own operations better or safer?
And John?
I would say Austin's perspective is refreshing because we don't have that same kind of transparency in Texas.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this as a former, comms director for an elected official. I think what you need is, first of all, we all knew, just don't, and pardon me for being vulgar, but don't piss on me and tell me it's raining outside. All right, and that's what we were getting at the outset. And when I figured out, again, because I knew some of the stakeholders involved, I got our external relations people on them like white on rice right away, because we were worried that homeowners were going to be given settlements right away with waivers attached. And we were telling people, just look, I'm not going to, hire your own legal counsel. We're not giving you legal advice. But what we will tell you is be on the lookout for this. And just having an open and honest relationship. I recognize there are experts that run these things. I recognize there are experts in the emergency response field. But we were going in there trying to be honest interlocutors. My previous boss was very much interested in trying to figure out ways to transform the office of county judge from not just being a place where we do deals with developers and engineers and projects. We had oversight over emergency operations. We had oversight over air pollution and pollution control. And we wanted to make sure that we were giving people real-time data that could be at least counted upon. That they knew that, if you need to stay evacuated, stay evacuated. So yes, radical transparency is key. And, when people come in with a different political ethos, like work together, don't work against one another. One of the biggest, and I'll curtail my comments, but one of the biggest challenges there was a personal animus between the mayor of Deer Park at the time and my boss. And if you have two people that, have static with one another, you're not going to get anything done. It's pretty simple. It's not rocket science. So, yeah.
Can I follow up on that?
Please do.
I want to provide a real life example that happened to us in one of the hometowns that we serve. So a small hamlet or village, I think is what it's called Capitola. It's near Santa Cruz, right on the coast, south of San Francisco. It's a beautiful area and a really tight-knit community between Santa Cruz, Capitola, and Monterey. And Christmas morning, there was a leak of our distribution line, and that leak migrated into a home, and the home exploded. And the residents, within a couple days, were demanding answers from PG&E, and rightfully so. They wanted to know, is our community safe? Is our natural gas pipelines in this area safe? What are you doing about it? And at the time, the best answer that we could give is we have no reason to think that they're not safe, but we are doing what we call an extent of condition. We are looking for other areas that maybe we found, that other areas in the pipeline system where what caused the failure in the Capitola incident, maybe there's other areas, and so we're going to aggressively look for those areas. But we didn't shy away from it. We didn't lawyer up. We met with the local business leaders. We had public open sessions. We provided an open letter to the newspaper, and we gave the best information that we could at the time. But you're not going to have all the information the day after the incident. So it's a follow-up a week later. We're still doing more work. It's another follow-up a month or two later. And so it's that continuous information and sharing what it is that you know and when you know it and what you're doing about what you're finding is just key to these local areas in making sure that maybe we're not perfect. PG&E is not perfect. We've demonstrated it many times. We're not perfect, but we are looking for those areas that may cause us a concern, and if we find it, we're going to fix it.
And I'm going to break a moderator rule, and I'm going to answer my own question on this one too, because, we don't have federal folks here that are able to speak, so I can speak a little bit to that experience, if that's all right with folks. As an NTSB investigator, one of the most frustrating things is to be able to go to a press briefing and say, I don't know. One of the most infuriating things is to say to a family, I don't know yet why your mom died or your sister. It's so hard. Sorry, it is so hard. And for us, we really want to make sure that we do it right. I think the worst thing that we can do in an accident is come out and on the first day say, oh, it was excavation damage and it was this company. They struck the pipeline and they didn't do an 811 call, when it's something totally different, or they did their calls. People can get hurt. There can be collateral damage from releasing information that's not really fully vetted. I think the problem, what we do on the federal side that we don't do well, is we don't explain those limitations. We don't say, yes, we don't know all the answers right now, but we're looking into this and we're looking into that. And that would be something that I would love us to do more of. From a rulemaking standpoint at PHMSA, transparency is not the name of the game, even a little bit. And I know that process is frustrating for the public as all get out, and I get it because it's frustrating for me. I can tell you, it's one thing if I'm a rulemaking lead and it takes me a long time to find the docket for an item that I'm uploading, I can't even imagine how frustrating it is for you. And so I can completely understand and get those concerns. And I think that's an area that I would really love to see PHMSA improve on and spend some time in working on. Do we have a question from the audience? Yeah.
One of the very frustrating things I see, I'll give you an example. I have a journalist friend, social media, who asked for safety inspection records. Now, from PHMSA, we like to see these inspection records. What people stuff. another year. He obviously forgot about it. They made a fifth request. They sent him 85 pages of nothing. He sent it to me, he said, what do you think of this? I said, that's nothing. That's just a bunch of nothing. Incomplete. And that doesn't lead to trust.
Check.
3 months into it, said, hey, we're working on this. We'll
Yep.
get this information to you. I've got a FOIA request in the NBD. I'm not waiting 8 years for the information I asked for.
Yeah. Completely understand that.
Listening to you. I know
Yeah.
those guys. I know they're good guys.
Yeah.
But I'm not waiting 8 years for the information I asked for.
John looks like he wants to jump in here, please. A question for folks that couldn't hear. A gentleman here, I'm not sure of his name, but he mentioned a FOIA request that someone he knew put in for some data, and it took a year to get the data back. And when the data came back, it was very incomplete. My guess would be a fair amount of it would be redacted. Yeah. So missing pages is sometimes an approach that FOIA can take. We can take when resolving FOIA issues if the timing is short. And I know that backlog is frustrating. Again, I can understand that frustration 100%. And John, you looked like you wanted to hop in.
Yeah, no,
And then I probably got to get us back to our scheduling program after
Sure.
this one.
It reminded me, though, his question reminds me of what we learned based on the data that we got from emergency operations people and the fire marshal.
Yeah.
And that's actually all publicly available. But then when you ask them to share it, they'll be like, well, there's a national security concern. And I just said, and pardon me, I was just like, bullshit. Like, the people have a right to know what they're living next to. And, like, I'm sorry, but, like, Osama bin Laden and his ghost ain't gonna come down and start bombing pipelines, like, you know, in Deer Park, Texas, of all places. Like, I was so annoyed at them, and pardon me for being so jocular, but it got out of control. But my point being is that the people who are living next to these things do have a right to know, and that was our point. And we ended up working and sourcing material to the Houston Chronicle, created an interactive map to share with people who live not just in Harris County, but in Fort Bend and in Montgomery. You live next to these assets and resources. It's helpful for people to know this stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that perspective. I hate to cut this off, and I know there was another question over there, but we're going to have some more question time at the end. So once we get back to it, I promise I'll get to you. You're first in line. So this one I'm going to ask for everybody. I'm going to start with Jacob here at the end, and we'll move on down. But given the recent spate of deregulatory actions that PHMSA has been putting on, and other agencies as well, like the EPA, how do those actions impact accident prevention and incident response?
Did you want me to talk specifically about data? Was that the same
Whichever,
question?
different question. This is our last one. You're good. And I can skip along to Matt if we want to come back. Let's go ahead and go on to Matt, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay. So there's definitely a concern about what is going to be removed from regulations. That's a concern that we have. And I was able to attend the GPAC meeting when they were talking about the leak detection and repair rule. So I was there, I was able to take a lot of notes. I came back and talked to my boss, and then all of a sudden that rule came out, and then it was withdrawn. And probably within about 2 or 3 days of that, my boss came to me and said, what are we going to do? What rules do you want to implement? And I kind of felt like, well, this is jumping the gun a little bit. Surely they're going to come out with something. And since then, I've realized that's not going to be the case, or probably will not be the case. So I think that we have an interesting ability as a state versus PHMSA. We don't necessarily wait on an incident to take action. For example, there's a lot of states on the East Coast that had a problem with cheating on the operator qualification testing, and they went in and implemented new regulations around that. So the deregulation part of it is definitely a concern. I can name several regulations that it would make sense to remove. And then if you sit back and you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, why would you remove that one? So it's going to be interesting to see what takes place, if anything is removed, or where it goes from there, because it sure would wouldn't it look good if all of a sudden you start taking out a regulation, there's an incident that regulation would have applied to? So I wouldn't want to be in their shoes to have to remove anything.
So I know that we talked earlier about the deregulation at the federal level and that there's a lot of concern relative to that. And I think that concern is very fair. But it's not just removing regulations, it's also updating regulations, right? There's a lot of additional and new technologies that are in place today, and the regulations need to reflect it. But that's just the federal regulation. So there's actually, I'm going to speak to kind of 3 levels of regulation: federal, state, and also the operator themselves. And speaking about it from a prudent operator perspective. So the states, again, which we talked about this morning, have their own regulations and are free to go above and beyond the federal regulations. So if your state that you live in doesn't change their regulations, even if the federal government does, then the operator is not going to be under any less regulation than they are now, because of the state regulation would be consistent. Beyond that, prudent operators, in my opinion, should go above and beyond both the state and federal regulation. And I encourage you, if there's an operator in your community or one that you're particularly interested in, is ask them in what areas do you go above and beyond the minimally compliant requirements by both the federal and the state areas. And they should be proud to tell you where they go above and beyond the minimally compliant areas. One area that I'm particularly proud of in PG&E is our excavation prevention program. So we have what we call the DIRT team. And yes, they're proud of the DIRT team, but it's the dig and response team. And so that dig and response team, every single dig in that we get in PG&E, somebody from that DIRT team goes and responds and analyzes and investigates to better understand what happened. And if it's PG&E dug into our own assets, then we take that as a learning to prevent it from happening in the future. If it's a third-party excavator that has dug into our pipeline, then we reach out to them and we educate them. We make sure that they know what the rules and the policies and the requirements are. And for those repeat offenders, we actually will report them to state law enforcement agencies to make sure that there's some teeth behind what we're trying to teach them, and that if they're digging into our facilities because they aren't calling 811 or they aren't following our rules, then there's actually civil and criminal liability that they can be under. But then, in proactively relative to excavation safety, is that DIRT team will proactively meet with the leadership of all these excavation companies that operate within PG&E service territory to proactively educate them on what the requirements are so that they can go into an area. And it does say, if a USA mark says PG&E gas, then they automatically have a foundation of knowledge of what they're supposed to do and what they're not allowed to do.
I hate to cut you off, Austin. I want to keep us moving to make sure we can get to some questions. It is a great program, though. I will say that. John, you're up.
I'll just say, when we were responding, we were in an incident trailer. We had, a live feed of the situation up, and I went to our oil regulator in Texas is called the Railroad Commission, and it has nothing to do with railroads. But when you go to the area about oversight of pipelines, you get nothing. You get redirected to PHMSA. Like, that's literally, you get written code from the titles about energy regulation and transport. That is it. So in Texas, we do laissez-faire real well, especially when it comes to oil and gas. I'm not anti-industry, but what I am is, when you make a mess, just clean it up. It's pretty simple. It's not a radical proposition. I think regulations, you're right, can always be looked at and improved. But having no regulations is not an answer either. Because I trust but verify. That was our ethos. To quote Reagan.
Thank you, guys. And I'll break the moderator's rule, and I'll add a quick take from my experience. But I want to echo something that Gary said this morning that really spoke to me when he got this question, which was that it really requires a surgeon's skill and not a meat cleaver. The regulations are layers upon layers of different administrations and different operating policies, and I'm just speaking from a federal standpoint, even different writing styles. I'll go look at the corrosion section. It's written in first tense, says I and you. It's so weird. But what I'm getting at here is that if you pull one string and you pull one section and you think, oh, I'm just pulling this one section out, that's all that's mattered. It's tied in 15 other places, and it may be referenced and it may not. And so it takes real skill and it takes time to do it right. I have concerns that that's not being done right now. Let's just say it that. So that's my thoughts on that. That is the end of our facilitated questions, but I would love to hear questions from the audience. And I promised this individual to ask first question. So you've been waiting patiently. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name's Chris DeGiulio. I'm from Pennsylvania, Chester County. We had the Mariner East go through, and one of the things we had was with the risk assessment, which is what tells the community the danger they're in pretty much. It was redacted heavily, number one, and when our emergency responders needed to get that information, because we pushed for that, they made them sign a non-disclosure. Yes, so how are they going to tell us what danger? It was almost like they were hiding the danger to the public, and I don't understand if there's radical transparency. We should all be understood. So we have like new rules in Pennsylvania through the PUC. We strengthened 195. Some of that is for requiring the companies to notify us in their routine maintenance and whatnot, but also setbacks from our schools. So yeah, I agree, we can go further, but what I cannot stand is not fully informing the community that is placed at risk every day, the stakeholders. And that was a real thing. We had to fight that. Does anybody comment as to why that happens?
It's awesome.
So I can't comment, obviously, on that specific instance, but maybe I can make a suggestion. In PG&E, we get a lot of data requests. And oftentimes, the data requests are hundreds of pages long. And we, as the answer of the questions, we don't even understand what it is that is being asked. So what my suggestion is, if you're looking for information relative to a pipeline or an action or an operation, is try to have a conversation with the operator, if the operator is willing to have a conversation, so that they can better understand what is it that you're looking for. And then we can share, I can speak for my company, we would then be happy to share the information that you're looking for to educate you. But there's a lot of fishing expeditions out there, and sometimes the fishing expeditions get mixed up with the people that are really passionate that want to know what's happening.
Well, what we ended up doing is we paid for our own, and the big thing just helped us with the person who actually did that for the industry. We paid for our own risk assessment to find the truth out. So, the information is there, we have to pay money.
Was this something your elected officials were entrusted to provide you? And if they weren't, did you look at who was giving money to their campaigns?
They redacted it. The company redacted it, so our officials went there, they were with us, standing with us, but they wouldn't do their own, we now know better, they should have done that, but we ended up paying because we weren't waiting.
And
If I could,
Matt, I think, wanted to jump in on this. Oh, Bill, go right ahead.
real quick, I just want to offer another resource in this. The pipeline industry worked with a multi-stakeholder group, including a strong public caucus, including Beth, on RP 1185, and it's an industry-adopted standard, and part of that is what kind of documents an operator should be sharing with public who request them. And it's really well laid out, and it really does put a lot on the operator. Like the default answer should be yes, and the default answer should not be no. And so you can use that document as this is what your own industry has adopted as best practice and what you should be sharing with a community. And that should put some additional pressure. Sorry to hop in.
I want you to jump back to Matt here. You had some comments.
Yeah, so as far as what you're asking about the information being available, years ago, my boss told me that the Pipeline Safety Trust has this program out there about transparency, and he beat in my head that this is what we should be doing. We should be transparent. And after he left, then another person took over for a little while, and then I finally was able to take over, and I got us to a perfect score. I am extremely proud of that. All of our reports are out there. Anytime we do anything, we post it on the website. You don't have to ask for anything. The only thing that we do not release is the incident reports, and I have no idea why. I've talked to our attorneys multiple times to try to understand that. But the thing that I do is at least I say, hey, here is every incident we investigated. Here's the operator, here's the date, here's the location. That way you know, hey, there is something out there by my house. I can go ahead and request it, and you can send it. And I even give instructions on how to send out a FOIA. Now, everything's a double-edged sword, and recently we received and this is kind of what you were talking about, we received a fishing expedition of 44 incidents. You're talking tens of thousands of documents and photos. And I had no problem complying with it, but let's try to figure out what I can get you to help you with the information you need than just give you so much paperwork it's going to be lost in there. So I think that we are trying to do those things, and I think the trust is very impactful to try to get the states to make sure they're being transparent on those things.
Thank you so much. I think we had another question over here.
Yeah, thank you. So I spoke a little bit about this yesterday in our 101 class, is the amount of distribution third-party damages. It was brought up by the gentleman from Illinois who just updated their 811 laws. So congratulations to you guys on that. Hopefully that trend goes down, and PG&E. So, but I would like to encourage folks in the room that one thing that they can do to prevent damages is get involved with your state's 811 system, understand and help drive updates to your state laws and enforcement. Harris County has some of the some of the largest rates of damages in the country on their distribution natural gas system. And we really need to update the laws in Texas, right? And so, hopefully, the gentleman up here, we can get your support in that area. But it's not just Harris County. It's many states, right, across the U.S. that need consistent excavation laws to prevent those damages, updated laws and enforcement. So I just wanted to respond to the two gentlemen from Illinois and PG&E.
I do want to point something out regarding that. Usually every year I go speak out in Arizona at a Western Region Gas Conference, even though I'm in Illinois. And one of the things I did is I wanted to look at data as far as California, Nevada, and Arizona as far as their excavation damage ratio. California is one of the best states in the country as far as their excavation damage ratio. It was shocking to me to see that it was so low. And Illinois, our rate is by far higher than what theirs is. We have more damages than what they have, and they have by far more locate tickets than what we do. So it's always one of those things that you always need to be learning from other people. And when I was out there, I asked that question, to the people that were there from California, how do you guys get this rate down? So there are some things that they are doing very well. And I was impressed. I mean, it was the West Coast states that were really doing the best.
John, I saw you lean forward there. Did you have any comments in response to Harris County, or were you just just settling? I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss you.
I am absolutely sympathetic to your position, but in Texas, I would say good luck, Like, in Texas, pro quidness is big business. So unless you know who's paying the piper, then the tune ain't gonna get called. Yeah, and I think that's a very nonpartisan thing. And, it's interesting when you can we walked the Republican on the commissioner's court into that position and made him feel as if it was his own idea. Because had my boss had done that, that's communism, socialism, no. This is about safety. This isn't about taking money from you. This is just about a modest proposition. Yeah. And just to reiterate what you've said, politics is very mundane and very labor intensive. It's about doing the work and following through. And if you have a critical mass of people calling you on the phone telling you that, your boss is going to do something about it. So you're right. Yeah.
But operators don't have to wait for the law to change their practices.
Yes.
They can go above and beyond now.
What other questions do we have? Okay, looks like there's one over here.
Thank you so much. My name is Kate Lyon Hunter. I represent communities here in Louisiana's Cancer Alley. And I loved hearing what California and PG&E is doing about going above and beyond. But I want to talk a little bit about the situation in Louisiana where there is no above and beyond. Because I'm really worried that we're going to be on this lessons from recent incidents next year. Carbon capture pipelines, this is ground zero for that, as I'm sure you know, CO2 pipelines for CCS activity. Exxon Low Carbon Logistics is trying to put one within 100 feet of homes in St. James Parish because we don't have strong local laws, and for a very, very long time here, oil and gas has had capture over our regulators. It's a little different with carbon capture in that we're seeing more grassroots resistance to it, but I just want to highlight that there is such a strong difference in what's possible in these states like yours, where operators are going above and beyond, and unfortunately here, where they're meeting the very bare minimum and the small protections that we have. So looking at PIMSA and those rules, we're hoping that even in a draft state, we can still get our state to adopt those. But what I'm really just wanted to let you know, I love what you're saying about going above and beyond, but we don't get that here.
Not to brag further on California and just to speak to this, but I learned yesterday that California took the notice of proposed rulemaking that was not fully published out in the world, but presented out, never made it to the Federal Register, that PHMSA did, and they adopted it wholesale, and that's amazing. And other states can do that. And like Austin said, operators can take those practices as well. So we don't have to wait on PHMSA to act. What else? Got some more comments over here, please.
As politely as I can, I just want you to remember a day in 1993, I bought a farm, and the next morning I was informed by Pacific Gas Transmission and Electric that they were taking the farm, and they did. And we've spent all these years trying to resolve the legal issues, because basically it was a scam. We gave a man $80,000 and signed an agreement and lost the property, and have always lost that property. And we have dealt with PG&E and PGT and the state and FERC and you name it. We've been there. So what do we do with people like me? I mean, it's a piece of history that's horrible. I don't know how many people are out there like me, but I've stuck it out, and I've always been polite and tried to be helpful. I've spent all these years with PST, and we're still waiting for someone to tell us, did we just get scammed, or was this some great adventure in natural gas? I just don't know. Thanks.
Well, I'm sorry that happened. Sounds like it was an eminent domain action maybe, 35 years ago or 35 years ago. Maybe see me after this is over. I'd love to get your information, and I'll look into it. I don't know anything about it at all, but I will certainly look into it. Was it in California, or was it in Oregon or Washington?
It was in Oregon.
Oregon, okay, yeah, that was PGT, so the Northwest Pipeline, which another operator is operating now, because we sold it about 25 years ago. But let's chat after the session, maybe. I'd love to learn more.
And I'd like to add, people from industry and from PGT, the people out on the field, were very nice to us and pleasant, and I think they saw the wrong. They just didn't know what to do either. So I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, but I'd like to see this come to an end.
I'm sorry that happened to you. So let's talk after the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've got another comment over here.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm in the sociology department at the University of Southern California. Thank you all for being here today. I was wondering if anyone had any insight to how PHMSA categorizes incidents. I was interested in particular the trending upward equipment failure category, and I'm wondering what, if aging pipelines is sort of like an assumption that's being built into why we might be seeing more equipment failure and what the stakes of those assumptions might be. Like, do we know that that's why there's more equipment failures? I'm thinking about in particular, like how that could be used to potentially justify the build out of more new pipelines. And so I'm wondering, like, if anyone has more detail into what actually comprises that category, or how we even categorize what incidents, like how incidents happen when there are a number of like complex factors that go into them. Thank you.
I'm going to let Alex answer that one, but I want to clarify one thing. That the number of equipment failures, it was very low as far as incidents. What we're seeing that is on annual reports, and on the annual report, and I apologize for not being clear on that, but that is capturing the number of leaks that they have. So it's not necessarily an incident, it's just the leaks. But as far as incidents, it's not trending upward.
So to answer that, one, I think specifically what you're talking about for the classification would be 30-day reports is what we called them casually, but accident reports. The 30-day timing is 30 days after the incident. Obviously, a higher category of an accident has a different category, but for those 30-day incidents, there's 9 categories. Don't ask me to list them. I'm going to embarrass myself in front of the group if I try, but the last one being other. But you can assign a main category, and you can also assign a subsidiary category. At least you could the last time I was at PHMSA, so that might be wrong now. And then they use that as a classification. We have general definitions in the form instructions for those different classifications. I know when I worked at PHMSA, the accident investigation team went through every single 30-day report that was received to make sure that it was classified in the correct classification, because sometimes when they are complicated, it can be in the wrong class, or if it's a newer operator, that's also an area that happens. To speak to your second part of the question, which I think was kind of using those as justification for new pipelines, building a new pipeline today is very difficult and it's very expensive for a lot of reasons. Some good, some bad. And in a lot of cases, if an operator can retrofit an existing pipeline, they would rather do that. So what you might see is instead of a build out of a new pipeline, you would see a retrofit or a replacement. So for example, like pulling out cast iron pipe and replacing instead with a plastic would be more of what I would expect in terms of how that would impact that. But there are others that might have more thoughts on that. Anybody else from the panel want to speak to that question?
Well, in general, I don't know the answer to this question, but it's one question that I would have is oftentimes the reporting criteria changes. So something that is an incident in 2025 wouldn't have been an incident in 2005. So you have to be careful when you're tracking and trending that data and seeing the incidents that go up. Are the incidents truly going up, or is the reporting criteria getting more strict? And that's why the incidents are going up. And I don't know relative to the data that we saw earlier in the panel session, but to me, that's one question I would ask is it really apples to apples 20 years ago to now or 10 years ago to now?
The data integration is fun on that too, let me tell you. Looks like we have time for one more question or 2 more questions.
Yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to perhaps connect you to the pipeline safety trusts. We've got the ability to look at this incident data, but equipment failure can represent, it can be some sort of mechanical failure. Think of a relief valve. A relief valve, when high pressure comes to this particular piece of equipment, it will open and it will relieve that pressure, either to the atmosphere or maybe into a tank, depending on the pipeline. But those pieces of equipment, they don't always work as intended. There may be a broken part, there may be a worn out part. It may operate, too low. All is to say, there's also, rubber and plastic that are in some of these pieces of equipment. And so those types of things can contribute into this category, and we'd love to support you in looking at that data. And I'm sure that's an area that, Jacob might be interested in, but yeah, thank you. Good question.
That's what I was going to say is Jacob wants to add a little bit to this, and then I think we have to wrap up. But do we have time for one more question? Bill, you tell me afterwards. Okay, Jacob's going to add his thoughts, and then we'll get to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Maggie. This may or may not be related, and I don't know if this is a question that can even be answered right here, but one thing that I've noted from staring at, the incident data far more than anyone ever should, there's an alarming number of incidents that are also just other or miscellaneous, and I don't know, is that just, a reflection of the complexity of a particular incident, or it's just not known? So I think that maybe speaks a little bit also to some of the issues that you're raising, and that's something that I've thought about, and I just don't have a good answer. Because sometimes in certain regions, like other or miscellaneous can be a huge, number of the total incidents in a certain time period. So, yeah, just something I've been pondering as well.
I'm just wondering about sort of like natural incidents, right? Like landslides, droughts, subsidence, things that we're going to see more and more frequently as climate change continues to exacerbate extreme weather events. Like, what is the industry doing to, like mitigate for some of those, particularly around the coast and in like Harris County, where we already have the most like hazardous liquid pipeline incidents in the U.S.?
You mentioned Harris County. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll try to be as brief as possible. I think that is something that the oil and gas industry is very cognizant of the fact. If you had a Cat 5 surging up the Houston shipping channel, that is not just a disaster of epic proportions, but you're looking at an environmental catastrophe and you're looking at an economic catastrophe. There has been very little political will to build the so-called Ike Dike. That is probably the best thing you could do as an intercoastal spinal network and building that to absorb the shock of massive surge. So those stakeholders need to be more vocal. And it's not just the people who live along the coastline. Another thing is zoning. That's something that I forgot to mention during my remarks. There's no zoning in Harris County. So people live right next door to refineries. People live right next door to egress and pipelines. So that's something that's going to take political will to change that. And right now that doesn't exist. People are just so worried trying to pay their bills and make ends meet. They're not thinking about the long run either.
So in California, what PG&E is doing, we are absolutely aware of climate change. We're planning for it. We're preparing for it. Primarily in the flooding and landslide area. So either static flooding where you get like a new lake forms that has never been there in the past, or dynamic flooding of a river that goes higher than it typically is, or a landslide because you just had so much rainfall that it inundates that particular area, and then you get a landslide resulting from it. We're using technology, we're incorporating that into our risk register, we're preparing and analyzing for that, and actually executing it. We're folding that into existing projects to make sure that we can prepare for it in the future, and then planning future projects to accommodate for that if and when it happens.
Okay.
Just based on the question, what qualifies an incident? Because you said a gas leak was an incident.
So it depends. So on the gas side, they're called accidents. And on the liquids, or am I doing backwards? On the gas side, it's, y'all, I got 6 months off from pipeline. It was great. On the gas side, they're called incidents. On the liquid side, they're called accidents. And there's a set of criteria. There's a cost criteria. It has to exceed a certain cost. I don't know the certain number for that right now. Clayton probably could speak to that, or Matt. Injury requiring hospitalization, which is a very gray area. And I know the PST has strong feelings about this, and so do I. A fatality. And I think the fourth one is in the operator's discretion. But am I missing anything? Okay.
Emissions release.
Okay.
So the amount of methane that you release to the atmosphere.
Volume, yes, volume as well. Yeah, volume. Thank you. It's been a little bit, folks.
I know we're at the end, but can I just relay my gratitude to PST?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
By all means.
The reason...
Why don't we all?
I mean, frankly, the reason why I'm here is I Google searched congressional testimony, and I found a subcommittee that was addressing DOT and PHMSA, and people from PST were testifying. And so I got on the horn right away and put our external affairs people and our policy people in touch with them. We came up with a modest proposal because we recognized that our oversight is very limited. And we got big-footed by RRC and Governor Abbott and Dan Patrick right away. Because we have a target on our back because we're Harris County. That's just how it is. But we crafted a modest proposal, and here's my admonition. This is a long struggle if you want to change things. You have to look at the example of Harry Belafonte, who backed a lot of civil rights causes and saw everything in the United States for what it was, which is it's a long haul, and you have to have the energy to get there. So our proposal was merely just a petition to the Railroad Commission to have some safety standards. And because of political animus between my former boss and other members on that commission, on not the Railroad Commission, but the County Commissioners Court, like it got tabled. It just got tabled. And it's just, if you don't have the personal relationships and if you don't look past those things, then the people suffer. That's it.
Thank you guys so much. You've been a really great audience. I really appreciate the engagement. Bill?
Yes, thank
you. Am I taking Bill's spot here? Thank you.
No. I was hoping I just have 2 announcements before we
Please.
go. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alex. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you, all of you. We have 2 things tonight. We've got a reception. Everyone's welcome downstairs in the solarium from 5:30 to 7. And then for anyone who's interested, a longtime tradition of the Pipeline Safety Trust Conference is the beignet walk. We'll meet at 9 o'clock, very unstructured, casual. Meet at 9 o'clock in the lobby for anyone who's interested, and we'll walk over to Cafe Du Monde together and have some beignets. What's that? I would imagine Alan's going. I haven't asked specifically, but I know it's one of his favorite things, so I'd imagine he's going.
Don't wear a suit because you get powdered sugar all over, like I did.
And don't breathe in too much when it's near you, or you'll inhale it.
And if you didn't have time to ask your question today, please feel free to approach me. I'm just gonna hang out. I got nothing to do till dinner, so come and bug me. Thanks, guys. Good job, guys. Well done.